Welcome to the A New Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're back for the second half of our amazing interview with world-renowned scientist and best-selling author, Dr. Satchin Panda. Dr. Panda gave us some really amazing insight into how important our circadian rhythms are for our health, our weight, how we age, you name it. We're going to be diving into time-restricted eating and what that actually means and how that is in alignment with our circadian rhythm and can help us maintain a healthy weight without even trying. So, Dr. Panda, please explain. You kind of went into it a little bit in the last section. Give me a picture of what time-restricted eating is.
Yeah, so that's a mouthful of term time-restricted eating, but in popular media, this is also one most popular form of intermittent fasting. There is almost 13 years ago when we first published this result from this research, we called it time-restricted eating because we are not calorie restricting. There is no reduction in calorie. Originally there was no counting of calories. And the idea is instead of counting calories, if you just look at the number of hours or number of minutes you are eating, there will be few benefits. One is if that eating window is consistent, then that will sustain your circadian rhythm in physiology, hormones, metabolism. So that means your body can metabolize or absorb nutrient much better and also process the nutrient, use them properly. And during the fasting or overnight fasting period, the metabolism actually changes from building stuff to cleaning out or removing the toxins. So your body has enough time to remove these toxins that your body doesn't need and repair itself. So that was the whole idea. And then the idea came from, again, very foundational research in mice. And again, we are going back to this basic research because these are some of the questions that we cannot ask in humans. So the original experiment was very simple. We took mice that are young. They're born to the same parents in the same room. They have the same gut microbiome, same genes. They ate the same diet. We actually gave them a little bit unhealthy diet, and they ate the same number of calories. The only difference was one group was allowed to eat whenever they wanted, and the second group was allowed to eat the same number of calories from the same food within an 8-hour window. So that means mice are nocturnal, so they're night active. They eat at night time, unlike humans. So in the evening, we would give them access to food. They would eat for 8 hours. They catch up with what the other group was eating. And we did this for 18 weeks, which is equivalent to feeding a human for 10 years or so, roughly. And then after 18 weeks, what we found was the first group that ate whenever they wanted. They were obese, diabetic, they had high cholesterol, all the telltale sign of metabolic dysfunction, or they had metabolic disease. And later on, we also figured out that they were also more prone to cancer. But the second group that ate the same number of calories from the same unhealthy diet within 8 hours were completely protected from all of these bad things, bad metabolic disorders. So that was the first experiment. And then in the second experiment, we took the fat mice, those already had the disease, and we put them back into 8, 9, or 10 hours of eating, or even 12 hours of eating. What we found was in case of mice, between 8 and 10 hours, if they eat within 8 to 10 hours, even for 5 days out of 7 days, even though the mice were allowed to cheat on weekend, they could still maintain their healthy body weight, they could still get almost 80 to 90% of benefit of doing the 8 hours every single day for 7 days. And they also improve their muscle performance. And sometimes at least the male mice could put on some extra muscle. So that was really surprising. We published those. And then in the intervening 15, 13 years or so, there are at least 1,000 different research papers repeating the study in different conditions in different countries, even in different strains of mice, rats, and now even in fruit flies and also in humans. And the conclusion is very similar, that if mice, humans, or any animal can eat within 8 to 10 hours consistently, at least for 5 to 6 days in a week, 7 days is much better, then they can prevent disease from happening, not only metabolic disease. Now, there are some studies showing even you are less prone to cancer, or even those who are going through cancer treatment, they may combine this intermittent fasting to manage some of the adverse effects of, because people who go through chemotherapy, they have chemo fog in the brain, they cannot think clearly and they're confused, or their body reacts to some of the drugs. So at least those, maybe, again, is a big qualifier, maybe, because people are different. Some people might have different stages of cancer, different stages of different types of drug. So I was surprised the profound effect of this time restricted eating or time restricted feeding, or in popular media, intermittent fasting, on not only our metabolism, but also for some hormonal disorders, for cancer, for even now for dementia, and some of the psychiatric conditions. So,
Yes, and are they finding the same? I mean, I don't wanna give the people the impression that you can eat, like, donuts for 8 hours and not have any kind of metabolic disease. Maybe mice can, and
yeah,
good for them, but what's the difference in terms of, like, the quantity of what we eat during that,
yeah.
time period?
So this is also something interesting, that although we might say, well, you can eat anything. But what we're finding is, after maybe the first week is difficult, people typically eat over 12, 13 hours. Most people will say, no, I eat within 10 hours because I have my breakfast at 8 and then I finish eating but my dinner at 6. But then you probe a little bit. What do you do after waking up? And then some people will say, well, I have a little bit of tea. Oh, I put just half a teaspoon of sugar. That should not do anything. But actually,
Mm.
as soon as you start putting even sometimes even black coffee, because black coffee also triggers some metabolism. But anyway, suppose say we forget about black coffee and black tea. Anything that you put that has sugar, cream, or all of these, any of these, then that triggers insulin response, because your body has to produce insulin to take care of the glucose that is entering your bloodstream. So that is waking up the village, I'd say. So
Mhm.
similarly, you might finish your dinner at 6:30, but then you might have a nightcap or a little snack before dinner, before sleep snack, or somebody comes to you, visits you, or you go to visit somebody. So all of these things matter. So that's
Mhm.
why we say you have to be really religious or strict about eating within this 8 to 10 hours. And if you do that, then we find that after a few weeks, the first week is a little bit difficult. People will feel hungry and all that stuff. But then after 1 or 2 weeks, what we find is interesting. People actually find that donut to be too sweet. So the bliss point for sugar actually changes.
Wow, that's cool.
So they cannot, like I personally, even I could finish a donut several years ago, but not anymore.
Same.
1/4 of a donut is enough. So my bliss point had changed. And then what we also find, some people find that the same French fries or the chips to be too salty, or they're not that appetizing. Because what happens is, when you go through this 14, 16 hours of fasting, what I think is happening is your your taste sensor, the taste buds are also recycling. They're also getting sensitized. So you tend to enjoy food, the natural flavor and taste of well cooked, healthy food much better. And you don't need that high dose of sugar, salt, and
That.
fat to trigger your brain to feel happy. So you can be happier even with less food or less uh, sugar, salt, and fat. So
Hmm.
that's kind of a side effect that we see. There is a nice paper that came out from Geneva, one of my collaborators, and he did a study on time restricted eating in Lausanne and Geneva. The nice thing, the reason why it was interesting was those who are familiar with that part of Europe, there are German speakers, English speakers, and French speakers. So that means they have various different culinary preparations, and also people have different habits, cultural habits. And what they found was when people were restricting their diet to fixed 10 to 12 hours in that case, then they inadvertently improved their diet quality.
Mm.
So this is kind of a interesting side effect that we didn't know, that people actually improve their diet quality when they try to stick to 8 hours or 10 hours.
That is amazing. Just naturally.
Yeah.
Just because you're giving your body the chance to remove toxins. And, if you're eating a lot of highly ultra processed foods, you're getting a lot of additives and preservatives and strange chemical concoctions. And if you give yourself enough time to release those from your body, they may not hold such an addictive quality anymore, which I think is really hopeful. What about how much and when? I've done a lot of reading about how if the bulk of your calories came in the morning and in, early afternoon, and then became much smaller towards the evening time, that was the best, especially for your insulin regulation. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so as we have circadian clock that does different things at different time of the day, there are few things that you touched upon. One is what happens in the morning. So, for example, in the morning, as you can imagine, your body has rested for 12 plus hours. So that means your digestive juices are primed and your stomach can digest a good chunk of food. And your insulin response is also much better. This because the beta cells that produce insulin, they are also primed. They also have a circadian clock. They respond to food much better.
Hmm.
As a result, in the first half of the day, it's not only like right after waking up, in the first half of the day, say 6 to 8 hours after wake up to that time, the body is much better in digesting, processing food, and controlling blood glucose. So that's why having a bigger meal in the first half of the day is better for your body.
Hmm.
As the day progresses, your insulin response goes down slightly so that you can even do the experiment yourself. If you have access to CGM, you have the same bolus of sugary drink or smoothie in the morning. You look at your blood glucose, how it responds, and then in the evening, after 7 8 hours of fasting, you can drink the same sugary snack or smoothie, and you'll see for most people, the evening post prandial glucose spike will be much higher because our pancreas doesn't respond correctly. In
Hmm.
that way, yes, it may be better to have bigger meal towards the first half of the day. But then there is another caveat. Our body kind of plays tricks with us. One is, if we dial back more than 200 years ago, we didn't have food available to us 24/7. Even fire was not 24/7. And keeping a fire going in the house was very expensive because you had to burn coal or wood through 24/7. So that's why in the ancestral population, what was happening was people would come back from hunting or agriculture, and there was no refrigerator. So even if you hunted and you got a rabbit um, or some meat, you cannot store it overnight. You have to cook it. So that means in the evening, the community or the family would light up a fire and then cook, grill, whatever it is, and then would share the meal. So as a result, what has happened is we humans also have another interesting phenomena, that is we are more likely to feel hungry in the evening. And so that means we're feeling more hungry in the evening, but our insulin response is much better in the morning. Why is that? Because in the morning, you're not going to go kill a rabbit and eat it. In the morning, you're more likely to go and find some ripe fruit or vegetables, which has a lot of carbohydrate. And that's what we're designed to eat during the daytime or in the first part.
Mhm.
Whereas in the evening, when you come back, and in most cases, you are grilling some meat or protein, and that doesn't need too much of insulin response. So maybe that's why we are designed in a way that we are feeling more hungry towards the end of the day, but our insulin response is much better in the beginning of the day. So,
But do you think that for the most part, in terms of just human biology, that for most people, even if we have the tradition of dinner and dinner being for many people the largest meal of the day, our bodies function much better in general if we have the bulk of our calories earlier in
yeah,
the day?
yeah.
Yes.
And also another thing is, and if you go back to many 200 years ago, it was not that every night somebody is killing a deer or bringing a big animal. It was a little bit of food that was shared among many people. And in a family, there would be 6 or 7 kids, and then the grandparents and the uncle, and then the people who are sick. Everybody has to share the same meal. So it was not a big feast every day, but we are having a big feast every single
Yes.
day. So that's the difference. So now, if we combine all of this, so maybe what would be practical would be after waking up, maybe wait for 1 or 2 hours before your first meal or breakfast, and have your breakfast at a consistent time. Just like going to bed at a consistent time is good for your mental health, having the breakfast at a consistent time is also good for our metabolic health. And after, suppose, say you wake up at 7, you are waiting for a couple of hours, your breakfast is at 9, and in case you cannot have breakfast at home because your commute time is long, you can always bring your breakfast back, a breakfast, eat at work. And then suppose, say you count 8, 9, or 10 hours, then from 9 o'clock, 10 hours is 7 p.m. So that means if you're back home around 6, 6:30, then you can have your dinner, and that's when you'll close your kitchen. So by 7 o'clock. So that would be an ideal way where you can balance everything. You are still having breakfast, you are having a light lunch, so that you build up enough appetite for a good dinner with your family. And then, suppose you're finishing dinner at 7, most people go to bed after 10 o'clock anyway. So you will have 3 hours of good fasting before going to bed, because this 3 hours of evening fast actually helps you to digest food so that your core body temperature can go down and your melatonin builds up and it's not interfering your blood glucose regulation, so that you can have a good night's sleep.
I tell you what, that's what I've been doing now, especially since I've read your book. I make sure that my breakfast and my lunch are kind of my biggest meals in the day. I have something light towards the end of the day. I exercise early, which I think is also much better for our sleep later at night. Like you said, if you're exercising in the afternoon, it's great. You're exercising. We love that, but you may have a delay in your sleep because of the stress hormones that come from that. But ever since I started to do that, I mean, I have not had a problem with my weight. I've had wonderful sleep. And especially, when I am very conscious about the health status of my food, keeping it more on the healthful end, whole foods, plants, that whole deal. Um, I know that I operate so much better. My energy is better. Mental health is better. I really honestly can't remember the last time I was depressed. Yeah, there's normal, like chaos in our political climate, anxiety out there that I think we all have. but I certainly handled it so much better, thanks to so much of the work that you've done. I also work with people who struggle with eating and with eating disorders. And I've actually seen, I think, some difficulties come from people who have co opted your research to squeeze it into diet culture. So what we so what we see is this like adherence to intermittent fasting as a diet, and a lot of people make their windows very short, or they will hold their eating until like as long as humanly possible until they're about to pass out and then start their dieting. So, can you address that at all? Have you heard about, the co-opting of time restricted eating into diet culture?
Yeah, so typically people think that when they go from say 14 hours of eating to 12 hours, they feel better. 12 to 10, they feel a little bit better, and then 8, they might feel better, and then they think that okay, so if I can reduce it to 3 hours or 2 hours, one meal a day, then that will be
That's
more.
a whole diet, the OMAD diet, and I'm like, I don't even I would die, like, literally, if I only could eat 1 meal a day, that would make me very sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit extreme, and particularly for young adults or anyone, say before the age of 60, they are typically having a work. They have to go to work. They're doing a lot of stuff. They're taking a lot of complex decisions throughout the day. And what we find is, even I've talked to some people who do this one meal. What we find is what they do is they try to hold up the hunger by drinking a lot of black coffee or black tea throughout the day, and towards late afternoon they're kind of hungry.
You think?
No, actually, I have heard the confession that some people are very hungry, and but then they still take the badge of honor that they can hold up until evening, and then they eat that long big meal, and then they go into food coma and sleep. So that's one way people are dealing with it. And what we see is most of them actually cannot hold on to doing this for a very long time. They might do it for a month, too, and then they will realize how, sometimes they're not eating with their family, sometimes they're not socializing with anybody. And they realize that this is not a healthy way mentally, emotionally, and also physically. So then they will revert back to maybe eating within 8 or 10 hours. For women, we have seen quite a few women, they want to do everything perfectly. So they would try to eat within 8 hours. They'll go for 5 miles run every single day. And then they will try to eat a lot of salad and reduce their total food intake. So then what happens is they get into what we call relative energy deficit in sports. So this is a mouthful, but actually nearly 40% of athletes, even Olympic level athletes, so Boston Marathon runners, and even weekend athletes and collegiate athletes, the varsity athletes, high school athletes, nearly 40%, 4 out of 10 are doing this. They are eating less and they're exercising more. And they might feel better because they are slim and trim, they have a good physique, but actually internally, their organs are suffering because when you have less food available, then your body will eat itself.
Yes.
So that happens. How it eats itself is the bone mineral density goes down, so they can have high risk for bone stress injury. And for women, the telltale sign is their menstrual cycle will become irregular or they become amenorrheic. And in fact, you might have heard many athletes, they would say that they are amenorrheic or irregular menstrual cycle, and they think that being an athlete and having this is so common that it may be normal. But what is
Mm.
common is not normal always. So if they see that their menstrual cycle is changing and becoming more irregular or amenorrheic, then that's a good sign that they are eating less and pushing their body to the extreme.
Mhm. Absolutely. And, I think when we are looking at people who are trying to improve their health, they're getting all of this messaging from diet culture that hunger is bad and we need to stave it off, or we got to like muscle through it or drink as much coffee as possible, which is, I can't even imagine the anxiety these people are feeling when they do this. And I'm always trying to tell people that hunger is not bad. Hunger is a very important signal. Can you explain to people why it is so important? And it is important to heed it. It's important to feed ourselves when we're hungry.
Yeah, so when we feel hungry, so that means it's a sign that our body has used up most of the easily available sugar or carbohydrate, and it's kind of tapping onto our store. So, and most of us, we think that and also we kind of dramatize this. If you're hungry, people will come and say, "Oh, I'm starving." No, you don't know what is starvation. Sorry, most people don't know what is starvation. And then your reaction is you should reach out and grab that energy bar or something to feed yourself. But if you're for a regular person, if you had a good meal in the morning, it takes roughly 5 hours for that breakfast to get digested in your stomach to go to intestine, and that's where a lot of nutrient absorption also occurs. And when you're feeling hungry, particularly when people start that time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, they're stopping at 7 o'clock, that dinner time, and then at 9 or 10, they're feeling hungry. So that means the brain is so used to that evening snack that it's just triggering, hey, go reach out for that evening snack. But actually, your body is perfectly fine. In fact, many of us who have a BMI above 21 or 22, we carry enough reserve in our fat and muscle that we can go for even 1 or 2 weeks without food, and the body will continue to crank. So in that way,
Unhappily, but yes.
yeah, theoretically, that's how much reserve we have.
Mhm,
So that's why you will hear all this news when, after a natural disaster, after an earthquake or something, somebody was trapped under some building for 7 days and they found him alive because, the body was using that reserve.
mhm,
So the bottom line is when you start that hunger, that means the body has either depleted its easily available carbohydrate and is looking for that storage, and let it look for the storage. Let it take out that stored fat that we have been storing and burn it off a little bit. And in fact, just when you're delaying that um, meal, and literally your body can will be perfectly fine with 3 meals or 2 meals even in a day, and in between if you're feeling hungry, that's just a sign that the body is switching from one energy mode to another energy mode.
mhm,
And when it switches that, then it's actually a good thing, because when we use energy, whether from carbohydrate or fat, we also our body also produces different types of molecules that are used in building our body or repairing our body. For example, after several hours of fasting, say overnight 12 or 13 or 14 hours of fasting, your ketone level will go up slightly. So ketones actually come from burning fat,
mhm,
mostly in the liver and some other parts of the body. Not every part of our body can make ketone, but that liver burning its fat is a good thing, because that's how liver doesn't accumulate that fat that leads to fatty liver disease, which is a silent killer.
mhm,
And your body is doing at least 2 or 3 good things. When you burn that liver fat, then you are protecting yourself against fatty liver disease. That's going to affect 1 in 3 adults in this country. Second is that ketone is going to power your heart and many other organs, because some of our organs actually love ketone than sugar.
mhm,
Third is some of the ketone actually are good for our immune system, because they make our immune system more efficient in finding, say, tumors or baby tumors or tiny tumors or even fighting bacteria and other things.
Mhm.
So in that way, when you're hungry, you ask yourself, and have you eaten enough in the last 12 hours?
Mhm.
If
I
so,
think that's hard for people. I think that,
it's
you
hard.
know, it's
Right.
habit, with what
Yeah,
they eat and how much they
yeah,
eat. And certainly, I think allowing the body to be a little bit hungry, and getting to a certain point is good. But I think diet culture just takes that to a whole new extreme. And we're
yeah,
seeing that most especially with these weight loss medications. And what we're seeing on the disordered eating side or the eating disorder side is that some people are consuming maybe like 850
yeah, yeah,
calories in a day, and so what we're seeing is that amount of calorie restriction, even if they're losing weight, most often it's water and muscle that they're losing.
yeah,
Your body goes through a whole set of processes that are not going to be sustainable in the long term, just like any hypercaloric restricted diet. Once you go off of that, the body basically understands, now I'm not in emergency mode anymore.
yeah,
And when you're in emergency mode, yes, it might be burning off of those things, but holding on to those juicy fat molecules.
yeah.
That's why people weight cycle as soon as they go off of something that's hypercalorically restrictive. So, would you say that the takeaway, and I cannot believe we're almost at the end of time, Dr. Panda, I just want to spend the whole day with you. But would you say that the takeaway is that there is a fine balance,
Yeah,
that we know from our circadian clocks that we can eat more and more, starchier carbohydrates and things that are, a little heavier in the morning. We reduce it a little bit more in your lunch, and then it gets smaller in your evening. And therefore, you don't ever really need
yeah.
to, quote, restrict your calories or go into extreme hunger.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a fine balance. You don't overeat, but at the same time, you should not calorically restrict yourself for many days.
Mhm.
There is some data that, well, 1 or 2 days of calorie restriction may be good, but then beyond that, it can wreak havoc by eating away your body.
Mhm.
So, yes, I agree that there is a fine balance there. And as you mentioned, for some people, when they feel hungry, they immediately have to eat. And that's why some of these new drugs, like Ozempic, Wegovy, and all of these, they're helpful for people who cannot tolerate that hunger because it's essentially reducing that signal so that people feel full even with a small meal. And the idea is it's almost like when you are trying to learn that bicycle, this is the third wheel. You're given this third wheel to gain back control of over your hunger and satiety. And this is also an opportunity when you have the third wheel, then you got to start riding your bicycle much better so that you don't need that third wheel after a while.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, and if I could add, if we actually do listen to our hunger and we listen to our fullness and we actually follow our circadian rhythm, we enhance the production of our own satiety hormones because we make them. It's not like we're getting them from these drugs; we make them ourselves.
yeah,
We enhance the production of them, especially when we're present, when we're eating. We eat when we're hungry. We eat slow enough in our meal to understand the moment that we're satiated but not over full. And then we balance our fullness hormones as well. Would you agree?
yeah. I mean, that's why I said that when people start doing timeless eating or intermittent fasting, in the first few days, they feel hungry at bedtime. But then after a week or two, they don't feel hungry anymore because the body actually learns to produce or reduce that hunger hormone at bedtime and increase satiety hormone so that people can go 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours of fasting without feeling hungry. So, this way, having a strong circadian clock brings back that hormonal balance of hunger and satiety so that we can get back to our daily rhythm of feeling hungry at the right time, eating the right food, and then feeling satiated so that we can go through the overnight fast.
Oh, I love this. So everyone, if you can take away from this that we have our own internal clock. Everyone's clock is pretty much the same. Sorry, you night owls. It's pretty much the same if we were to all go off into the mountains of Colorado, and you can all join me. I'm going to be there next week. So if we get back into this rhythm, we listen to our body's signals. We eat slowly enough so that our body can, take time with it and register all of this food in our stomach. We listen to that moment when we're no longer hungry and we follow this clock. We can have our optimal health without doing anything, especially when it comes to restrictive dieting. Dr. Panda, oh my gosh, you're just awesome. And you're just such a kind and good person, and just funny and wonderful. And I'm just so honored that you've come on my podcast.
Thank you so much, and have a perfect circadian day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Tune in next time for the second half of this. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I am really looking forward to the next exciting interview, although I'm not sure if anybody's going to be any more exciting than Dr. Panda. Dr. Panda, thank you for joining us, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the A New Insight podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anu.insight and at anu-insight.com under the A New Insight podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anu.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.